Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this December 29th meeting. This is an open forum. Anyone that would like to speak, please fill out a card. Most of you know what to do. As you may note, Councilmember Becky Wynn and Councilmember Jerry Orleans and Mayor Wood are absent with an excuse, but we are here and happy to listen. And who would like to go first? Ms. Russell, come on up.
I will end the year the way we started it, with my mouth flapping.
Happy holiday.
Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate, have a good time. Life is short. Good evening, my name is Janet Russell. I live at 260 Willow Springs Drive, Roswell. You know where that is. I do not live in Willow Springs subdivision. First of all, I'd just like to have a sad note. We lost one of our very long-time citizens of Roswell on Christmas Eve. His name was John Cook. John moved to Roswell in 1960 from Parma, Ohio. He lived in the same house on Hillcrest, which is up Chattahoochee Street up there by Spring Drive, for 60 years, since he moved here in 1960. John died rather suddenly at the age of 84. He's married to his wife for 59 years, had 7 children. They all went to Roswell High School, some of them with my daughters. So I just thought he was a Korean War veteran, and I just thought I would let you know that there are people, unlike some of the newer people that move here, that stay. John was a good friend of mine. I met him at church. He was a founding member of St. Thomas Aquinas when it was a mission church before it actually had a church. He was a fine man, and actually we had our last conversation on voting day in November. We vote in the same precinct at the Baptist Church, and we actually met in the parking lot after voting, and there was like 4 people who voted. And unlike most people today who are too busy looking at their telephone, John and Jan and I all met and were talking to each other for over an hour in the parking lot. So I'm really glad I had that last visit with him before he passed on Christmas Eve to go be with his Savior. He believed in Jesus. That said, I just want you to know that I'm here and I'm not going away in 2015. I'm not going away. I have a couple of things I'd like to discuss briefly. I know there's a lot of people behind me. Now, 2015 is the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vietnam War, and it is the 20th anniversary of our dedication of the Faces of War Memorial, which the City of Roswell promised to maintain in its present location in perpetuity. I checked the definition of perpetuity, and it does not include a sell-by date or an expiration date. I am going to hold the city's feet to the fire that monument is not moved, and I want you to note that most residents in Roswell notice that you have probably taken down 50% of the trees on this property, and the city has exempted itself from its own tree ordinance. I was here a few weeks ago when the mayor over and over again talked about, he read some quote about the tree ordinance, and if it doesn't endanger someone and it's not in this and it's not in that, we can't take it down. Those aren't endangering anybody, and you've taken them all down. That said, I'd like to move on to one other thing. You know, there seems to be some momentum growing about pedestrians and how much they want to walk places. Now, I know for most of you that's a new concept, but for most of you who know me, I have been talking about that for 41 years. I feel like I'm John the Baptist crying out in the desert. Prepare the way. Prepare the way. No one prepared the way. I would like to invite you to invite me to a think tank meeting where I can tell you some great ideas that I think will benefit this city. Today in the AJC there was an article about Sandy Springs and Alpharetta and how they're creating walkable city centers. City of Roswell already has a city center. We don't have to create a new one. We just have to fix it. That doesn't include moving our memorial or cutting down trees. Most cities would kill to have a forest in the middle of their city. I was just in LA this week for Christmas. They would kill to have some trees. Kill for trees. a huge project has happened south of the river on Roswell Road, which I'm just flabbergasted by, and I don't know how many of you ever go down that road, but you know, that's the way I go on MARTA, on the bus. They have implemented sidewalks for about 5 miles on both sides of the road, and the whole project's been accomplished in about 3 months. They've also implemented really attractive lamps and lighting fixtures all along the road, much like we have north of Woods, right here, Norcross Street. As soon as you cross the river and you enter historic Roswell, it's like you've entered Tutankhamun's tomb. It can't get any darker. I've been told, oh, we can't put those historic lights in because it's a state road and GDOT requires this and that. Well, obviously that's not true, because that's the same Highway 9 south of the river that it is north of the river. And they have implemented very attractive lights. It makes it more friendly. The town square in Roswell, everyone says, well, no one uses it. Well, no, because the lights are all off. The first thing you do when you have friends coming over is say, hey, I'm going to put the porch light on. The town square isn't lit. The fountain's never lit, which reminds me that the Faces of War Memorial Pump has been broken for 3 months. Again. It's not working. It's really embarrassing when I take guests there and explain to them in many languages that the tears, the water represents the tears that were shed for that war. But there is no water, so it's really hard to tell them that. The city's breaking their promise. So what I'd like you to do is invite me at no cost, unless you'd feel more comfortable and I can charge you $20,000 as a consultant, to sit down with you and give you some what I consider to be creative, innovative, cost-effective, pedestrian, encouraging ideas for the area I live in, which is this historic area. For next month will be 42 years in the same house. I'm not going away. I've committed myself to my friend Patrick Flanagan, who died June 26th from Agent Orange-related lung cancer from Vietnam. You know I was there myself. I'm not giving up on my generation of men, mostly men, who died in that war, and the 2 million who went to that war who didn't have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to go next? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is John Jameson. I represent Nesbitt Lakes Homeowners Association. My address is 515 Water Shadow Lane, Roswell. Mailing address Alpharetta, because they don't change the post office. And I am the homeowners president. I have a couple copies. I want to talk to you about a property rezoning request that's in play that we presented to the Planning Commission on the 16th, I believe, of December, that I'm sure you all will see the recommendations from. And I wanted to reiterate our support of that recommendation and just kind of bring you up to speed on that, since you'll see this on the docket as it exists today for, I believe it's January 12th. I have a copy of the petition if that would be helpful for you, and then I'd like to run you through a couple slides if that's okay.
You want to give it to Ms. Loud? We can make sure everybody sees it.
With me is Jerry Lucas, who is a person responsible with the Homeowners Association for our lake, and Hank Neal, who is also another member. Can you guys all see that? So the Sidell property is a property that is right next to Nesbitt Lakes. It's actually Nesbitt Lakes' final plat development as originally planned by the Brooks Horton Development Group. This property has been in play since 2006. There have been a variety of, and I'm not going to take you through all of this, but I'll take you through the salient points. This property has been in play at least 3 times. This is the 3rd time where developers have wanted to come in and develop this particular property. In the past, we had agreed with a particular developer for preset conditions for the development of that property. Because of the financial problems of 2008, the property wasn't developed. There's another developer that has come forward, the Providence Group, to redevelop that property. Reluctantly, we have agreed as a neighborhood, we have 70% concurrence that this property will at some point in time be developed in some way. And we just want to make sure that we're protecting our benefit, our neighborhood, in the best way that we see fit. So that's kind of the development of the property, the highlights. Our objective is really fourfold. One is to make sure that we preserve the safety, or the basic lifestyle that we've had there since the property was developed in 1991, I believe it is. We want to make sure that we ensure the safety of Nesbitt Lakes residents. And we've identified a couple key components for that, which the Planning Commission has also endorsed, which is connection of Creekside Trace to the new development, no gating of this development as opposed to what has been proposed, and traffic flow improvements at the beginning of Nesbitt Lakes. We want to make sure that our lake is protected and preserved, which we believe there are some provisions within the normal state and city codes for that. And we want to make sure that there's proper buffering between our neighborhood and whatever is developed at this point. So the staff, the Planning Commission staff, actually made a number of recommendations. I don't have that with me. I believe it was about 10 or 11 specific recommendations that our homeowners association fully agrees and supports. We asked for a couple other stipulations at the time. When the Planning Commission voted last month, they basically passed the recommendations from staff as a condition of the development for the Providence Group, and we concurred with that, and we just wanted to reiterate the importance of that. The Providence Group had some issues regarding the connectivity to the back end of our neighborhood, as well as some of the traffic-related issues that were asked for. Since that point in time, we have met, or I have met with the developer. We are going through some further discussions and negotiations to try to come to an agreement prior to the January 12th meeting, but given the fact that it's the Christmas time and New Year's, we're not 100% sure we're going to get there, but we thought that it was important that you at least be aware of it and have the opportunity to ask questions prior to that meeting if need be. To give you a couple illustrations of why we think it's important, traffic is a very important, well, let me do two things first. Let me just kind of give you a picture of where this is. This is also in the rezoning piece. But the Sidell property you'll see is a landlocked property between Stutterford on the north up here and Nesbitt Lakes all through here. We believe that it's important that we connect those two things as a function of the UDC that was passed to help facilitate some of the blockage that we experienced in the past year when we had a fire in our neighborhood. Then I'll come back to that. First of all, on the traffic front, these are some sample pictures you have better on the hard copy of what our neighborhood looks like on a typical morning. As a neighborhood, we actually pay for off-duty policemen to navigate and manage traffic into and out of our subdivision during school between 7 and 9 in the mornings, and after school between 4:30 and 6:30. Traffic is so bad there that we just can't get in and out without that. So that is a critical component to us. You'll see in the bottom left-hand side, traffic leaving Nesbitt Lakes often backs up as many as 10 cars deep if the policemen aren't there to try to get out of our particular neighborhood. There's one other very important picture that I have somewhere. Last year, or a year and a half ago, we had a fire on Nesbitt Lakes Drive. You can see the picture of the fire on the right, and you can see the picture of the fire trucks fighting that fire. The house burned to the ground, and during the 5 hours that the firemen did their best to fight that fire, our subdivision was completely blocked, and people could not get out of our subdivision, which is why it is so critical that we believe the connectivity to Creekside Trace is made within any kind of a development that happens within that neighborhood. This just gives you another picture of it. I brought it up before, but that makes it a little bit more meaningful. This is the connector road that we're suggesting actually happen. This is the way you currently get in to the back of our neighborhood. It's a 2.5-mile long cul-de-sac. The fire occurred actually right about here, which essentially blocked the back half of our neighborhood had there been any specific emergencies. And this is a picture of our lake. We have one of the most pristine and clean lakes. Jerry can talk to this a lot more effectively than I can, but we have it managed and monitored, and it has a Class A dam that holds it back. It is downstream from the development of the Sidell property, and it's one of the most important things as far as the property value that our homes maintain. We think it's just very, very important that we take every effort to ensure that any development on that property doesn't just wash into and fill our lake with silt. Okay, any questions?
Councilmember Price.
Yes.
There was one slide, and I was unable to really take it all in, but you mentioned something that Fulton County Superior Court had to declare on. What was that exactly?
So one of the things that the Providence Group has brought to our attention is they believe they have an easement on the very front of our property that allows them to go across Nesbitt Lakes community-owned property to access the Sidell property for its development. Hank has a picture of it.
Right here.
Right there. We believe, and our attorneys believe, that that easement is not valid. So we have filed I believe it's well, I wrote it down here because I can't remember what it's called, but something to the effect of a declaratory judgment for Fulton County to review that easement along with the documentation that our attorneys have put together to say that that easement isn't valid because there are other access points into that property for development. And one of the things we had asked the Planning Commission to do was to not issue a land disturbance permit until that declaratory judgment by the Fulton County Supreme Court was made. So that was what that was all about.
And we don't know when that might be coming.
No, we don't. I mean, it was filed October 31st. Our attorney talked with the courts early December, and we don't have an answer on that at this point. Hopefully we will in the next few weeks, but we don't know.
Okay, but we're on the schedule for January 12th?
The review of this petition is on schedule for January 12th with the mayor and the city council, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Did you guys want to say something?
Let me just add a couple of things to embellish. This is maybe a
Sir, if
little...
you wouldn't mind giving us your name and address as well, please.
My name is Jerry Lucas. I live at 9055 Nesbitt Lakes Drive in Nesbitt Lakes. I've lived there for 18 years. Let me add just a little bit to what John had talked about. That's a little bit better picture of our lake. And as for those of you who haven't been in Nesbitt Lakes, it's called Nesbitt Lakes for a certain reason. We have lakes there. We have two lakes there. This is our large lake, and we also have a smaller lake there, but this is our large lake. This lake is 11.5 acres. It might be one of the biggest lakes in all of Roswell. I'm not sure. You people may know that. But it's a very large lake. If you drive back in Nesbitt Lakes Drive about 1.5 miles, you'll come to this lake, our large lake. It takes you 2 miles to get all the way back to the end of Nesbitt Lakes Drive. And that's a point that John had talked about that's important to us. Here's what this looks like now. You can see the Sidell property that's kind of landlocked inside of us that's talked about being developed. The blue area in there is an old lake inside of the Sidell property, and then the other blue lake is this lake I just showed you. But then look at the red line that comes in there. That's Nesbitt Lakes Drive that goes all the way back inside of Nesbitt Lakes for 2 miles with only one entrance and one exit to it. You would not approve that in Roswell now because it requires 2 of them the proper distances apart, right? So what we're saying and asking is that at a minimum that something like this be done where the Sidell property, that's the roads that they are talking about having in there, at least that road come back and be connected with ours to allow at least 2 ways to help better the situation at least a little bit and not make it worse and connect it. That's initially not what the Providence Group is asking for. The Planning Commission has already voted against that and said it should not be a gated community and it should be laid out more like we have proposed here, and we would agree with that wholeheartedly for connectivity reasons and some of those type of things. As John mentioned, our dam is a Category 1 dam, and most of you know what that is, which is reviewed by City of Roswell, and you can see the dam way in the back there. It's a huge dam. And by the state of Georgia every couple months, and we file quarterly reports with them as to what we're doing to make that dam in good shape. And it's our understanding that the City of Roswell will also require the lake and the dam in the Seidel property to also be brought up to Category 1 standards, which it doesn't now at all. The other important facet is that this Seidel property, the way it's shaped here, has the Seidel property, as you go from right to left on here, you can see it has 3 different inlets coming into that drain off of the Seidel property. 3 different inlets drain into Nesbitt Lakes, which is very important to us. I had the opportunity, I went out the other day and took a walk around the Seidel property, a much bigger walk than I'd ever taken before, and with all the leaves off of the trees and everything, it's unbelievable what I saw walking this 53-acre property and stuff. It is unbelievable how rolling this property is, ups and downs and creeks and ravines and gorges and stuff in it. It's going to be a very difficult property to develop, so it'll be interesting. We sincerely request that the city review this very carefully and make sure that you protect our Nesbitt Lakes property that is downstream from this. I'll put this in the form of a question, if any of you know. When this gets to the point of being approved to be developed and they're trying to get a land disturbance permit, if I'm saying the right thing, is the city going to require that they do an impact study, to do a study by a qualified engineer to make sure that all of the impact of moving dirt around and stormwater drainage and stuff be reviewed and that they comply with that? Will an impact study be required of this developer?
I don't know if the impact study is. I know that our stormwater department is fairly famous for being pretty tough on making sure everything has come together. Now, which specific studies they'll require, I can't tell you off the top of our head, but I know that developers talk about it through clenched teeth, and we're happy to say that we know that everything is safe when they get done with them.
I hope so. I've been told to wait, because once they get the proper zoning on it, then before they can ever move an inch of dirt and so forth, they have to get a land disturbance permit, and they have to follow chapter and verse in doing that. And I'm told that they have to get an impact study. They will have to drain the lake, tear down the dam, build it up to Category 1 standards and stuff, is what some of the feedback I've gotten from some of the people at the staff at the city. And so we hope that that's the case. We know that at some point in time this property will be developed and used in some way, shape, or form, but maybe this plan is not the exact way that it should be done because of the unbelievable topography, creeks going through there, a lake, 3 inlets coming into us. Maybe it's not the right usage for it. Maybe they're trying to plat out too many homes, too many streets, you know what I mean. It can still be developed, but maybe they're trying to put too many of them in there. I invite any of you to come out and walk the property, take a look at it, take a look around Nesbitt Lakes between now and January 12th before this is going to come before you. I'd be glad to host you and show you around out there and show you, because as you know, seeing is, pictures are better than 1,000 words and so forth to really see what it is and so forth, and I think you'll be better informed for your January 12th meeting.
Thank you. We appreciate you getting involved because it does make for a better process when the HOA is involved. Hopefully the developer will work with you along the way. That's the best case scenario for us. I do know that our legal department is aware of the Fulton County suit and is in contact with the parties there, so we are monitoring that, and I would think that would have to be a factor in any kind of permitting that's done going forward. Yes, Dr. Price?
Just had one question about the proposed connectivity. Would that require any right-of-way acquisition within Nesbitt Lakes?
As far as this back street, you mean, coming in?
Yes, you showed several connections.
Right here where you see there are 2 stub streets already into this property, because it was to be the 4th phase of the development of Nesbitt Lakes that never happened by the original developer. There's one up toward the front here, and right back here the one we're proposing let through is a stub street that is already stubbed in. It goes right up to the edge of the property, and there's room for that street to go right in there. So it's already ready to go, and no former approvals of us is required, or anybody else.
Okay, great, thank you.
I appreciate
There would be some sort of an approval should the easement that they have proposed, should the court rule against the Providence Group on that easement, there would have to be a right-of-way given by the homeowners association to allow them to access the very front of our neighborhood, which we have concurrence to be able to do.
Where there is not a stub street, it'd be a new entrance.
What usually happens next is, I believe it's next week, we have our legal meetings with our attorneys, and they explain kind of what the status is of all the different parts and pieces, and then we can ask questions there, and then we'll have, obviously, the public hearing where both sides can present. But having you involved makes a big difference, and I am very familiar with this. I have a friend almost at the back, and I know that I feel better that...
You know where that street is, I believe, because it's right across from their house.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about, and I can imagine. I didn't realize you were locked in for 5 hours, but that's kind of frightening. But I appreciate you getting involved and making that part of the process, and that always makes a difference, so thank you. We can answer questions along the way. Did you have anything else?
Hank wanted to talk a little bit about the buffer.
I'm fighting a cold, so I'm sorry if I'm a little hoarse. I'm Henry Neal. I live at 2510 Club Walk Trace, Alpharetta. To try to go through this a little bit, in the past, we had a former development agreement. It was an 81-page agreement with the Columns Group, which basically was, part of it was to buffer the homes that basically, I don't know if you can see that well, this is Club Walk Trace and Club Terrace Trace, and these homes will be backing up to a road that would be directly behind these homes along Club Walk Trace. So you basically have, you'll have two road frontages, basically. These roads aren't really the type of road that you're visiting in the United Development Code, where you have rear entry, garages where you share, one or two houses. This is an actual public road. And there is going to be, in the former development that was approved, there were 17 lots along this road. Now that with the new development, there'll be 19 lots. Okay, so I live right here, and I'm going to be faced with basically hearing two roads passing by my property line. The situation for the planning staff and planning board, the UDC does not require a buffer between two like-kind zoning classifications. And we actually had an agreement with the former development to actually do a 50-foot buffer, landscape buffer, that would do a little bit of noise abatement by grade elevations and creating a little bit of a, slopes, but that would lessen the impact of tire noise on the road. My problem is when the planning board listened to that, heard that, but asked Brad Townsend, do we have, a buffer requirement between like-kind zoning classification? And they said they do not. I believe they're in favor of this, but they decided to just vote as the staff recommended. So I'm here tonight asking for the council and the mayor to understand this situation and see if it can help us either negotiate an agreement with the developer or require a buffer requirement behind these homes. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I'm not sure without the applicant here how much we can go into the discussion. I want to make sure we protect both sides of that, but you've brought up some good questions for us to ask in our meetings, and certainly the public hearing on January 12th will be the time to really go into that with both sides right here. Thank you very much.
My name is Michael Cook. I live in 1015 Summer Oaks Close. I do not live in Nesbitt Lakes. I live in Studdiford. Could I have the map, please? Okay, Studdiford runs along. This is basically the boundary of the Sidell development. This is Studdiford, followed here by another subdivision which is Woodfall. There are 10 homes along a certain area here, they're built on 2.38 acres. The other side of the fence, it is planned to put 13. The houses that are there currently go from 1,800 square feet up to 2,800. The 13th, and there are 10 of those. There are 13 planned at 4,400 square feet, more than twice the size. Some of the houses in Studdiford, their deck actually touches the boundary, and they still complied with the 25-foot buffer from the building to the boundary when they were built. What we're asking for, obviously, is a bigger buffer. There is one house that they've suddenly found out that half of the playing area that their children are playing on, they have climbing frames and swings, half of that is not on their property. This is how close they're going to be to those homes. We're talking houses against homes. The other thing is that at the back of Studdiford is one of the highest 2 points on the site of the development. We've been told by the developer they're going to blast. I mentioned this at the zoning meeting, the last one, that you have a developer who is willing to spend all that money to develop houses, actually tells people that they're going to blast, and yet when asked cannot give you an answer of where. All we can assume is that as we are on the highest part, that's where they're going to blast. It's the highest part for one reason. It's not sand, it's not clay, it's got to be rock. The other thing is that most of that, the whole Sidell area, most of it is hardwoods. We've seen it before. Developer comes in and sculpts, then plants a couple of hundred trees and says it's the same, and we all know it's not. That's one of the things. I've lived in that area for I've backed onto this property in the same house for 30 years. I've walked that area 3-4 times a week. It's part of my exercise route. The trees know my name, that's how often I've walked it. And to see those hardwoods go, it's going to be sacrilege. It really is. Being on that property, close to it for 30 years, I'm going to go into something that I call local knowledge, which doesn't affect roads, doesn't affect blasting or anything like that. It's the water flow within that property. It's been touched on slowly here 2 speakers ago about the topography of the area. It goes up and down. It's unbelievable how rocky, how steep, and that means the amount of water that flows into Sidell Lake. What I will explain before I show you the pictures. This top area here, on the right hand side here is Nesbitt Ferry Road. You have Mount Pisgah up here, you have Woodfall, and you have Studdiford. All of that area is higher than this area here. This is, apart from the lake, I believe is the lowest area on the whole site. Water floods down here. I've seen water go from here into that lake, sometimes as high as 2 feet. You can actually walk through there and see the gouge in the earth that's been made over the years of the water rushing in. Now, to show you how much water actually goes into this lake, and what goes in's got to come out, and when it comes out, it goes to Nesbitt Lakes. Okay, close to the dam, there is an overspill area, and by that overspill area you have a wooden footbridge. Now the picture on the top left here, I took on the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. That was on one of my exercise walks. You can see that the water is right up to under the bridge. The one on the other corner shows it 3 days later on the 27th. With a tape measure I was able to ascertain it's approximately 10 inches. To back this up, the bottom left shows the overspill, the amount of water coming out on the 24th, and on the right it shows how much water is coming out on the 27th, still coming out on the 27th. Because it had dropped 10 inches, the center picture shows a water line on the trees. That's proof. Now, just saying it's 12 inches that it's dropped is not really enough. So what I did was I did some calculations on the lake and how much water is going in from the surrounding steepness of the land. There is a stream in the bottom right hand corner of the lake which sometimes in summer does dry up. I haven't known it to dry up in about the last 4 or 5 years. What happens is when the water comes in, not only is there water from that, there's a possibility of the water coming in from the other areas. But I must admit, on the 24th to the 27th, no water went into that lake from off-site that I could see. Now, I've done a bit of a calculation, and I don't want to bore you with figures, so I'll cut it short. The lake is a whisker under 2 acres. That's what I've worked it out to be. Now, that is 87,120 square feet. Times 12, you get cubic feet. 2 acres times 1 cubic foot, and you have 7.48 gallons to a cubic foot. 7.48 to a cubic foot. So when you work out the calculations, 1 inch is equal to 54,300 gallons. Multiply that by the 10 that it dropped on that day, and is still dropping today when I walk through there. You've got over 543,000 gallons of water went into that lake. What goes in has got to come out. That's the out figure, and the water's still going in. But that's half a million gallons going downstream into Nesbitt Lakes. From Sidell to Nesbitt Lakes, you have a meandering creek, which is eroding, which has nothing to do with what the developer does on this lake. He should also be responsible, because it's on the land that he's developing, for any of the water once it goes down the overspill into the lake. Not only make the lake clean, there's silt being picked up on the way down. Now, I'd like to invite you, I won't charge you $20,000 as a consultant fee, okay? But any of you that wish to come out, I will show you what I've talked about. You can see with your own eyes, but wear your hiking boots because it's pretty steep. And I'll be only too pleased. I'm retired, so anytime any of you want to come out, including anybody from your department, I'll only be too pleased to do it. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, sir. Do you have your contact information on the
I handed it to the lady when I arrived.
Great.
Okay?
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who'd like to be next? Mr. Fleck, you're up.
Merry Christmas, all. Hope you have a happy and prosperous New Year. Lee Fleck, Martin's Landing. I have a couple issues I want to talk to you tonight. One I sent you a lot of information on. The other one has to do with the Ben Roethlisberger Foundation. Call it blood money, as far as I'm concerned. I want to just say I'm very disappointed in the Roswell Police Department for having taken those funds to secure a K-9 that will replace the K-9 who's going to probably senior out in the near future, which I came before this council on many occasions and convinced you all to put $30,000 in to buy that K-9, if you remember. several years back because Jerry Lee, the K-9 that was the only one you had at one time, came down with cancer, et cetera, et cetera. The officer paid for the medical care, went into remission. The dog eventually got cancer again. Long story short, you finally put $30,000 into the budget and got the dog. That's it for that topic. Personally, I think you should have told Ben Roethlisberger to take his money and put it where the sun don't shine. Now, the topic that I sent you a lot of information on, I guess my first question is, how many of you had the opportunity to read any of it? Did you? Good. You know what I'm going to talk about, and it's the better-known CRI chrome rubber infill that's used on your synthetic fields. I hope you can see all this. Now, I'm sure that the Synthetic Turf Council, which is located here in Atlanta, Georgia, will tell you how it's as safe could be. The interesting thing is that the second sentence, the very second sentence, they say, we sympathize with those individuals who are battling a serious illness. Good God. What we're talking about is also the Synthetic Turf Council. Allow me just to give you an idea of who makes up that council. The members include builders, landscape architects, maintenance providers, manufacturers, suppliers, installation contractors, infill material suppliers, and other specialty service companies. Now, some of you may or may not know, I've spent a lot of years on your athletic fields here in Roswell. I'm licensed by the state of Georgia to coach up to U15. I spent 15 years as an official, both the recreational, high school, and the semi-pro USISL league. So I've spent a lot of time with the youth of our neighborhood and our city, our state. And so this is what gives me grave concern and why I've brought this to your attention. Let me just also give you a little information. Some of you may know what an MSDS is, Material Safety Data Sheet. Kent, I'm sure you know what it is. Any manufacturer makes anything that people are going to use and come in contact is required to provide the applicants, the people who work with that material, a material safety data sheet. I'm a degreed chemist. I want to just read from you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the MSDS. It's very extensive, but what I'm going to touch base on is health hazards associated with this material that you use on all your new soccer fields and sports fields. Health hazards. This product can contain fine fibers that may cause itching. This material is generally thought to be a nuisance dust. It says that there's no known carcinogenic properties. Signs and symptoms of exposure: itching of skin, irritation of mucous membrane, sneezing and coughing, irritation of eyes. Medical conditions generally aggravated by exposure. Could potentially aggravate allergies due to dust exposure, inhalation. That's from the manufacturer who makes this stuff. Okay? And I'm sure that your city has that. You have to have that based on OSHA laws, because your employees may come in contact with this in the acts of replacing it or working on the fields. Now, in the information that I provided you, I also provided you examples of alternative materials which are available. This isn't the only one. But basically what's interesting about this is you've got some compression material, but the very top brown stuff, what that actually is, it's quite commonly referred to as coconut hair, the hair of the coconut. So it's, you know, it's a environmentally safe material, and it certainly is being organic, is not going to harm the children or the participants that use these fields. Now, I was going to, if none of you had read the information that I provided you, I was going to put that in on record, but since some of you have indicated that you have read it, and I don't think I need to belabor that point, but there are a couple important points that I want to bring out. And particularly, while both the Environmental Protection Agency and the Consumer Product Safety Commission, let me go into those agencies first. The Consumer Product Safety Commission is obliged to protect children under the age of 12 coming in contact with any toxic material. That's how they really came to pass. You all heard about lead in the paint. Well, that comes under the auspice of the Consumer Product Safety Division. I deal with all these as a professional in the customs brokerage business. I deal with 13 government agencies, every agency the government has. The Environmental Protection Agency, everybody knows what that is. They're to protect the environment from any contamination. Poisoning of the ground, it might go into, leach into the water. Now, I want you to think about this for one moment. Water Park. You got all those fields there, right? They all have this stuff there. In the hot summer months, this rubber is going to degenerate. You get some rain, that stuff is going to leach into it, and you'll wash out to where? Big Creek, which is the infeed to your new water plant. Is it not? Just thought I'd bring that to your attention. At any rate, Environmental Protection Agency and Consumer Product Safety Commission performed studies over 5 years ago. Both agencies recently backtracked on their assessment of the material as being safe, calling for more that their studies were limited. And the EPA even went and told the NBC News in a statement that more testing needs to be done. And pay particular attention to this, the agency also said it considers artificial turf to be a state and local decision. That means now you are responsible for these fields and the material used on these fields. One of the problems with researching the potential health hazard of crumb rubber fields is the sheer variety of materials used in this product. Tens of thousands of different tires from different brands may be used in one field. According to the EPA, mercury, lead, benzene, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and arsenic, among several other chemicals, heavy metals, and carcinogens have been found in tires. The smell that hangs over crumb rubber fields is the scent of the rubber baking in the sun. The Connecticut Agricultural Experimental Station did extensive studies of this crumb rubber. And as I provided you that information, I think it's pretty obvious. They go into the 4 major chemicals that they identify under laboratory conditions, under normal ambient conditions, that this stuff is exposed to in your fields. I'm not going to belabor the point, but they go into what the carcinogenic potential is, allergies, skin, eye, respiratory irritation, thyroid effects and neurological effects, the release of heavy metals into the environment, particulates released into the air. And in summary, just a summary of the toxic actions. Severe irritation of the respiratory system. Severe irritation of eyes, skin, and mucous membranes. Systematic effects on the liver and kidneys. Neurotoxic responses, allergenic reactions, and cancers. I provide you numerous links to medical studies. And one of the interesting things is that USA Today did was that they put it out that the Los Angeles Board of Education does not allow this to be used on any of their playgrounds or any of their fields any longer. The New York Department of Parks and Recreation does not allow this stuff to be used. That's some big boys out there that have done a lot of research to make sure that this crap, that our kids don't have to be exposed to this. Now, a lot of the, some of the initial information I gave you is that where the cancer, lymphoma, is showing up is predominantly among kids who play as soccer goalies, because they dive down in it, they get it in their eyes, their mouth, so over an extensive period of time, they have correlated numerous cases of Hodgkin lymphoma to goalies who play on these fields. Now, what I hope that by my presentation of the information that I've given you is that you will never use this stuff again on any additional fields you put in here. And I would highly recommend that you seriously consider even removing some of this stuff from the areas on soccer fields immediately in front of these goals. And I would suggest you remediate the material here, because they have found no cases of blood cancer amongst soccer field players. That's the guys running around and the girls running around. High 90% were goalies. That's really all I have to say this evening, and I hope you seriously consider that. And I really have concerns for our youth continuing playing on these fields, and these fields are brand new. You just put them in, and they're going to be there for the next, remember, life expectancy is 10 years. Yes,
Councilmember Price.
Price, yes.
I don't recall if in the studies that you sent us, there was anything regarding football, because football players spend a lot more time on the turf.
You're 100% right. I know that you have one field down at the youth football field.
But as far as the studies go, there's no
No, ma'am, most of these studies originated in the Northwest because of all the rain and everything in that part of the country, and they put a lot of fields. They were way ahead of the rest of the country using synthetic turf fields. And most of the studies have been initiated in that part of the country, and then of course came down to California. Now you're starting to see the information going from east to west. But I really think that the football fields are an issue also.
But there's been no study showing any increased morbidity?
There are so many studies, Councilman Price, that you know, I didn't look into football, but I'm sure that that'll be a concern also, and should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleck. I think everyone certainly is concerned about the safety and health of our kids. Having a brother who played football, I can tell you the eye, skin, and lung irritation that I had just being in the car with him from the pesticides and the fertilizers and the regular grass was no day at the beach either. That's not an answer, but I know that was something that was in my mind as we talked about the fields, and I know that we have continually kept up with the studies and looking into it as it relates to the changes that have taken place in the turf itself. And I know just from the time I was at Roswell High School Foundation when we put in the turf there to the turf that we have, there have been significant changes in the way it's done. So I do think, Morgan could tell you what he's read and done, but I do know that that's something we follow, and it's something that we will not just walk away from.
No, I hope you don't walk away from it, because, yes, in many cases, this is embryonic information that's coming out. But it's leading down a very common path, saying that if you look into the studies of the companies that make this stuff, and the carcinogenic effects on the employees in the companies that make this stuff, that just bears more truth to the reality of how potentially dangerous this stuff can be when they start getting heated. Water leaching, these gases and heavy metals leach into that water over time. And like I said, your fields are brand new. They're going to be around a while. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. They elected you. Come on up.
Hey, my name is Magella Hardy. I've lived here for 32 years. I live at Tyson's Corner, 335 Tyson Circle.
Okay,
and
your name one more time, ma'am.
I'm sorry, my name is Magella Hardy, and I've been here for 32 years. Happy to be a member of the Roswell City. Just a lot of fun. You guys are fun. So let's talk about this real quick. We live in a small subdivision, 80 people, and the code enforcement says that we have a lot of people who have more than one car. Code enforcement says you can have your car on the street for 10 hours at a time, and so we run into some issues with that. We have a few people who live for others, and as C.S. Lewis says, when someone says they live for others, you can always tell the others by their hunted expressions. Look at me, I'm hunted, people. No, just kidding. Anyway, here's the deal. We were wondering, according to my homeowners association, they're going to show up tonight because there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of calling of the police department unnecessarily to have them come out. You know, they've ticketed people, they come down here, they get the ticket dismissed by the city attorney or by the court. There's been a lot of brouhaha about what's going on in our neighborhood. And so the office, this is what they said in an email a couple weeks ago, the officers for Tyson's Corner Homeowner Association will attend the City Council meeting on Monday, December 29, 2014, request that within our neighborhood we're allowed to park on the street for 24 hours without our cars being classified as abandoned or ticketed. However, according to our liaison police officer, Officer Frommer, he has indicated repeatedly that even though folks need to use the street in front of their houses for guest parking and other reasons, emergency access needs to be observed at all times. Ambulance, fire, and police cars must have access at all times. So I was just wondering if it is possible for us to have the code enforcement relaxed to where we could have it out there for 24 hours. No one has abandoned a car. We're all working class people, just nice middle class people. You know, sometimes we have more than one car, depending upon, you know, how many children you have at the time or how many adults you have in the family. So I was just wondering if that's something that the council can help us with. If not, I can work on other ways to do it. But what do y'all say?
Well, I know that we can't make that call here tonight, but I think I, for one, until this came up, didn't realize that that wasn't just a neighborhood thing. I assumed that was a covenant thing, but it is a citywide ordinance, so that would require
10 hours
research and some discussion, but I'm interested in discussing that. So, you know, we can, I'm not sure how that goes. Does Kay poll staff or we poll us and decide how? Sure, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Council would direct us to provide information about what that change might look like, how it might or might not impact the city as a whole, and we would bring that through the committee system for that discussion to take place.
So is there a time frame for that, or what does my next rational step to be that you guys need me to do to help you out with this? What can I do to help you so you can help me?
Well, I think you've started the ball rolling.
Thanks.
And so now we'll go forward and probably gather some information. My guess it would come to committee, and we would probably ask them about 100 questions that they would need to go back and look into, and what the impact is, because it is a citywide thing, what that really means. I suspect one side of the street may have something to do with it, to make sure that the emergency vehicles can get
Oh, yeah.
through?
My brother works for 911 dispatch, so you have to have one side of the street always available. You can't be in front of an electrical outlet type thing where you need to, or a fire hydrant. So, those are normal things that people have to be responsible for and be responsible about.
Well, and I don't think the 10-hour thing is that old an ordinance, so there may be some folks here that were involved that kind of can speed us along on that conversation and get to where we need to be.
Well, it's just confusing. Like, my brother works as a dispatcher, but he works a night shift. So when he puts his car on the street, if the rest of us are trying to get out of the house, then, he puts it on the street, but, at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's only been there for 3 hours, and they start, coming around because someone's called because there's it's after 8 o'clock and there's cars on the street.
Well, that's the other component that we can't do a lot about.
Right,
is
exactly.
To maybe find some way that everybody can come to some kind of like mind, and I don't know how you do that, but obviously you're we can certainly facilitate to whatever degree coming and meeting with the neighborhood in general is. And you said there is an HOA. Is that a mandatory homeowners?
They've been there for over 30 years, so the initial time has elapsed for it. It's a 34-year-old subdivision, and it's either 25 or 30 according to the real estate covenants. So the state of Georgia has 30 as the max. They aren't able to provide us with a copy of the original Homeowners Association covenants. So it's sort of 6 to 1 happened as
Do they meet every year and they have bylaws and guidelines?
They haven't had a president for a while. They've got a recording person. The person sends out emails to the neighborhood, and that's pretty much it. They were sort of, not well organized, but they have their moments where they band together.
Well, I guess point being, and it won't affect this ordinance, but when you go forward on things like traffic calming things in your neighborhood, it usually requires a super majority of the neighbors to be involved, and when somebody says they're an HOA, that implies that they've been voted and kind of made to be the
Not this group, not right now, not at this moment. So
that might be something to look at as a group and talk about how you can maybe get together. But it may be helpful at some point for us to have contact information. It is helpful for us. We have a registration online where neighborhoods can go in and give us a contact for their neighborhood, and that, if that's not up to date, needs to be, so we can get in touch with you.
Okay, great.
What's going on.
So those two things I can handle or work on. So thanks. And I have one suggestion. Y'all need an egg timer, like for 5 minutes. And then it goes off, and then you got to go.
Yeah, we've talked about that. And in regular meetings we do that, but thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for having me. Thanks.
Is there anybody else? Anybody on the right side of the room want to talk? Not a minute, no. Thank you so much. Everybody have a Happy New Year. Meeting's adjourned.